Go ahead and take the first minute of the last video and repeat here. Only it wasn't the fucking RPO this time. You just got ran over by Boston College. You had a week after losing to Georgia Tech to reset for a home game against the Eagles, and it looks like you did fuck all. Great job fixing that defense, Norville. Sure looked good getting torched by Castellanos and Robichaud all game long. All this talk and hype at Florida State's revenge tour took a brutal hit in week 0 and is now fully dead at the end of week 1. Remember that lawsuit you filed against the ACC? Sure looks like shit now, doesn't it? You want to bitch and moan about a grant of rights deal all offseason while you just got bested by a mid-tier ACC team for the second week in a row? Go right ahead and choke on it. You lost to the Big Ten equivalent of Indiana and the SEC equivalent of Arkansas. You think either of those conferences want to invite you? They're laughing on their stacks of TV money while you shrivel up and die in a corner. God, remember what it was like 9 months ago? Feels like a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? Florida State was riding high in the driver's seat to an almost guaranteed spot in the playoffs. Then Jordan Travis's leg turned into gravel. This was a sign of the end times for the Seminoles, as the following week you showed against Florida, who was 5-6 coming into the game, y'all weren't going to make it without Travis. You barely survived the game against Florida and now had to limp to Charlotte to take on a white-hot Louisville team. Despite using another backup quarterback in Brock Glenn because Tate Rodemaker was hot garbage and got hurt against Florida, it was your defense who saved you, your undefeated season, and your ACC title. The following day was Judgment Day for the playoffs. You came into the weekend number 6, but Washington knocked off Oregon from the top 4, and number 1 Georgia lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game. You are undefeated and conference champs despite the devastating injury to Jordan Travis. Historically speaking, that means you should be able to make it in, right? Wrong. The committee decided you are not worthy of being in the playoffs precisely because he is hurt. And as we saw in the final 2 games, without a competent quarterback, Florida State couldn't play at the same level they played before. Alabama makes it in over you at number 4, and the fan base fucking erupted. Everyone had an opinion. Fuck, I had an opinion, and it became one of my highest viewed videos at that time. A good chunk of the fans were pissed off an unbeaten team that won the ACC got left out. The whole thing made me agree with Booger McFarland for fuck's sake. But the deed was done. Florida State was left out, and suddenly the transfer portal floodgates open. Everyone worth a shit fucked off, leading the Seminoles wide open to being castrated by the Bulldogs in the Orange Bowl. So now what? Well, sue the ACC, of course. Their grant of rights deal is costing us money, and we need that in order to compete. We're totally not trying to just take advantage of a chaotic realignment period in college football. It's completely separate from that. It's totally not us blaming the ACC for our failures as a football team over the last decade. Why would you possibly think such a thing? With star quarterback DJ Uiagalelei transferring to Florida State after leaving behind the sinking ship of Oregon State and the leftovers of the Pac-12, the message by the Noles was clear. The Tomahawk Chop was preparing for the ultimate revenge tour. The Noles completely reloaded their losses to the transfer portal almost exclusively by adding via the transfer portal. Fuck it. Now it's payback time, bitches. It worked last season, it's going to work again. Except when it was time to buckle the helmets and pads, you fuckers failed to realize that your quarterback originally left the ACC for good reason. I have no other words to describe DJU. He is fucking garbage. He went 21-42 against Boston College, and he had the enthusiasm of a wet blanket during the game. He couldn't hit the bright side of a barn most of the goddamn night. People wondered why he went to the Beavers of all teams in 2023, and we are now quickly learning why. Dabo Swinney was able to emphasize DJ's strengths in 2022 and have an 11-2 season despite his flaws, but he was not going to use them in the following season. And Mike Norville, you ain't Dabo. Hell, you can't even hold his fucking clipboard. So his accuracy and his lack of general awareness on the field has now been exposed for all the world to see. Supposedly, this team was built to allow DJ to step in where Jordan Travis left off and continue the domination that they had prior to his injury. Except even when Jordan Travis was there, Florida State had flaws everywhere, especially on defense. Sure, they saved your asses in the final 2 weeks of last season, but those transfers you restocked have come together like oil and fucking water. And you can't stop the run against Georgia Tech and Boston College. You have zero fucking hope. By the way, they had struggles on the road against Boston College last year too, and nearly blew the damn game in the fourth quarter. And Boston College even had a different head coach last season. Oh, that's right. You not only lost to Boston College, but to their new head coach, Bill O'Brien. Remember Captain Buttchin, who single-handedly destroyed the Houston Texans from the top to bottom? Yeah, that fucker is Boston College's head coach. He hasn't been a head coach since 2020 and has been floating around the last 4 years in various assistant roles. You lost to him. You made him look legitimate. You fucked up that badly. As a final embarrassment, rather than pile it on, Boston College kneeled down the final 2 minutes of the game inside the Florida State 5. They proved their point. They beat you soundly. You have been embarrassed on national TV for the second week in a row in 2 different countries. Your playoff hopes were on life support before the game, and the Eagles just pulled the fucking plug. It's Labor Day, and your season is effectively over. After this weekend, it's safe to say all of Florida is in hell. Well, unless you're in Miami.